We're introduced to a lonely, pathetic man who gets hit by a truck on a rainy night. His vitals crash at the hospital and he drifts away. His last conscious thought, his life was basically over anyway. He wishes he'd at least lost his virginity. He wakes up staring at a wooden ceiling. A brown-haired man with a ponytail peers down at him and leans in for a kiss. He panics, then notices his own hands. They're tiny. He's a baby. This ugly, jobless loser got reincarnated into a medieval world with no electricity and candlelight. His new parents are Paul and Zenith, and a red-haired maid named Lilia works for them. Rudeus figures out his own name when Zenith searches the house calling for him. Within 6 months, the little freak has picked up the local language thanks to his infant brain. He explores the house, crawling under tables and rummaging through laundry like the creepy, reborn genius that he is. One day, he spots Paul practicing sword swings outside, leans too far off a bench watching, and falls on his head. Zenith rushes over and heals him with a magic incantation, green light pouring from her hands. Rudeus realizes this world has swords and sorcery. Now steady on his feet, Rudeus finds a magic manual upstairs. He can't read yet, but over about a year he teaches himself with Paul's help. He tests a water ball incantation by the window, and a small sphere of water forms before splashing onto the floor. He tries again without the incantation, and a violent blast fires out the window and knocks him backward. His vision goes dark because this idiot completely drained his magic power in 2 shots. He wakes up in Zenith's lap. She and Lilia think he wet the bed. He's mortified. Rudeus keeps practicing in secret. Over time, he discovers the manual was wrong about basically everything. Magic power grows the more you use it, and spells work fine without incantations. Once he figures out he'd been skipping a step, he fires a projectile out the window and accidentally nails Paul in the face. He keeps training until he attempts an intermediate spell called Splash Flow, and a massive torrent of water blasts through the wall of the house and streaks across the countryside. Zenith realizes what happened and wants a magic tutor immediately. Paul objects because they agreed the boy would be a swordsman, but Lilia suggests a compromise: magic in the morning, swords in the afternoon. Instead of the grizzled, bearded veteran mage they expected, a petite, blue-haired girl named Roxy shows up at their door with a staff and a suitcase. Paul can barely hide his surprise. Rudeus is instantly smitten, like the down-bad, reincarnated loser that he is. Roxy takes Rudeus outside for his first lesson. She demonstrates a water ball by launching it at a nearby tree and snapping it in half. Rudeus points out that Zenith raised that tree. Roxy panics and heals it with intermediate magic, restoring it so completely that it bursts into bloom. When she asks Rudeus to try, he casts the spell without even finishing the incantation. Roxy is shocked, then impressed. At that moment, the tree finally topples over. Zenith scolds Roxy from the window, and Roxy crouches on the ground, drawing circles in the dirt, convinced she'll be fired on her first day. Rudeus, channeling every dating sim protagonist he's ever played, puts a hand on her shoulder and tells her she gained experience. She looks up with a tear in the corner of her eye and smiles. Then she flicks his forehead. That night, the family throws a welcome dinner for Roxy. Rudeus watches Paul laugh with a tankard of ale and Zenith chat happily over her food. He thinks it all feels like a dream, maybe a dying dream from that truck crash. But he decides it doesn't matter. If he keeps getting back up and facing forward, maybe even a jobless recluse like him can get a do-over at life. A flashback takes us to the man's previous life. His parents' funeral is being held, but this miserable, disgusting shut-in failure is upstairs in his filthy room, watching videos while his family gets buried. 2 men in suits drag his sorry carcass out into the rain. At a crosswalk, he spots 3 students about to get flattened by a truck and shoves them clear. Back in the new world, Rudeus is a toddler practicing earth magic by sculpting little clay figurines. 6 months into Roxy's tutoring, he can use intermediate magic across multiple elements. During night lessons, she teaches him the world's history and casually drops that she's a demon. She warns him about the Spurred, a demon race with green hair and a red gem on their foreheads who massacred everyone during the Laplace War. Never go near one or they'll slaughter his entire family. Roxy mentions her own hair can look that shade of green and gets self-conscious. Rudeus tells her it's pretty. She says save that for a girl he likes. He tells her he likes her. She tells him if he still feels that way in 10 years to say it again. After leaving the room, this delusional little creep muses that those dating sim lines aren't useless in this world. He peeks through the door to watch Roxy walk to bed, muttering about the Spurred gobbling him up. Rudeus tries to befriend some village kids, but they give him cruel looks and he freezes up. He flashes back to being stripped and humiliated by bullies in his old life. He sits against a wall shaking until Roxy walks by. She tells him about her barren homeland and how this village moves her. She points to the mountains and tells him about the Renoa University of Magic beyond them and says he should go someday. He says she's the only master he needs, She tells him he'll surpass her easily. About a year in, Paul teaches him swordsmanship, but his body is built like a twig, so he gets tossed around. A year and a half in, the family throws a party for Rudius's 5th birthday. Paul gets tipsy and licks his own sword like an absolute clown, then hands Rudeus a real sword and tells him a man carries a sword in his heart to protect his family. Zenith gives him a book. Roxy gives him a wand with a magic stone, tells him he's mastered 4 types of advanced attack magic, and announces his graduation exam for the next day. The exam takes place in a field outside the village. Roxy demonstrates sacred-level water magic called cumulonimbus, summoning a massive storm. Lightning strikes near their horse and knocks it down. Rudius panics and tells her to heal it. She does, and the horse recovers. He casts the same spell, even bigger than hers. She congratulates him as a sacred-level water mage. The next day, Roxy packs up to leave. Paul and Zenith beg her to stay, but she wants to keep traveling. Paul apologizes, saying their son must have made her lose confidence, and Rudeus tells him that's not a great way to put it. She apologizes to Rudeus for not being able to guide him further, but he insists she taught him everything. She places a charm necklace from her hometown around his neck. As she walks away, Rudius chases after her and shouts his thanks. He reflects that she gave him knowledge and technique, but most importantly, she brought him outside. The trauma from his past life had kept him paralyzed, and she healed it without even knowing. Lilia then finds a pair of Roxy's underwear that this grubby little pervert had stolen, and he apologizes. Rudeus asks his parents for permission to go play outside on his own. Paul and Zenith are stunned but thrilled. Paul tells him a man's strength isn't for pushing people around. Rudeus jokes that it's for showing off to girls, then corrects himself. It's for protecting the weak. On his walk through the forest, Rudeus hears shouting. 3 grimy little waste-of-space village kids are throwing rocks at a small child in a white hooded cloak, calling them a demon. Rudius forms a water ball and nails the ringleader square in his dumb face, then chases the rest of them off like the spineless, pathetic little cowards they are. The kid under the hood has green hair, pointed ears, and red eyes. Rudeus remembers Roxy's warning about the spurred and checks the kid's forehead. No gem, so they're safe. He washes the dirt off the kid's clothes with water magic. The kid says their dad is a half-elf but doesn't know what race they are, and starts crying because their hair color makes them a target. Rudius tells them they're friends now. The child introduces themselves as Sylph. Rudius starts teaching Sylph magic, beginning with incantations. They spend the day together and Rudius walks Sylph home. That night, Paul confronts Rudius because the bully's mother came to complain. Paul yells at him and hits him without listening to his side. Rudeus fires back hard. He tells Paul he earned his trust by being a good kid, and Paul just threw that away. He says next time he sees a kid getting bullied, he'll join in and tell everyone that's the gray rat way. Paul backs down and admits he was wrong. Later, Paul reflects on the fight. He admits he was almost relieved Rudeus had done something childish for once, and figured he had to come down extra hard because the kid is a Saint-class water mage at his age. He drinks at the table while Zenith comes to check on him. He tells her he had a fight with Rudeus and says if he'd told the boy to get out, Rudeus probably would have left for good. Zenith asks, "Like you did?" Paul leans against her and wonders whether his own father felt like this. Months pass. Rudeus and Sylph practice magic together every day under a big tree on a hill. Sylph's mana grows fast. She asks Rudeus to teach her incantationless casting, and he explains the technique. Imagine the spell and squeeze the mana out through your fingertips. Sylph actually pulls it off, creating a water ball without speaking. She runs around celebrating before the bubble bursts on her head and soaks her like an idiot. One rainy day, Rudeus brings Sylph home to dry off and tries to get Sylph naked. I mean dry. Sylph resists and says no, but this dense, oblivious fool pulls her clothes off anyway. He freezes when he realizes Sylph has been a girl this entire time. Paul walks in, sees his son standing over a naked, crying girl, and the look on his face could curdle milk. In the bath, Paul calmly tells Rudeus to never force anyone and to apologize to Sylphiette. Rudeus is shocked by the full name. He tries to make up with Sylphie, but she avoids him for days. Paul gives him advice. Show her your vulnerable side instead of acting tough. Rudeus finds Sylphie and nervously tells her he misses her. Sylphie takes his hands and tells him she doesn't hate him. She asks him to just act normal. They make up, and Paul hugs them both, then looks at the sky wondering what the hell he just taught his kid about getting girls to hold his hand. Zenith announces she's pregnant and the whole family celebrates. Then at dinner, Lilia announces she's pregnant too. Nobody needs to ask who the father is. Paul slams his face into his soup and admits it. This rotten, shameless, gutless excuse for a husband got the maid pregnant while his wife is carrying his child under the same roof. Rudeus calls it pathetic, but figures Paul deserves credit for confessing. Lilia says she'll help with the birth, then leave for her hometown a month south. Zenith warns the journey would kill her after giving birth. Paul tries to speak, but Zenith shuts him down. Rudeus runs the math. A newborn and exhausted mother alone in winter for a month is a death sentence. He remembers everything Lilia has done, especially finding his stolen holy relic and keeping it secret. He tells Zenith he's getting 2 siblings, so why is everyone gloomy? Then fabricates a story about Paul threatening Lilia in her room at night. Paul objects, but Zenith silences him. Rudeus tells Zenith it's all Paul's fault, and Lilia shouldn't suffer for his mistake. Zenith gives in and tells Lilia to stay. Lilia breaks down crying. Zenith warns Paul this is his last chance. Lilia reflects privately and admits she was the one who seduced Paul. Listening to him and Zenith making plot every night for years, I mean having loud conversations every night, gave even a maid urges. She'd always been terrified of Rudeus because as a baby, he stared at her mommy milkers with a grin so repulsive she thought he was possessed. But he saved her, and she vows to repay him. Both babies are born. Time passes. Lilia tells Rudeus she and Paul trained swordsmanship together as kids. Paul had talent but hated practice, assaulted Lilia while she was sleeping, then fled. So not only is Paul a lying, cheating, spineless coward who can't keep it in his pants, he's been this way since he was a kid. During sword practice, Paul taunts Rudeus about being stuck at elementary level. Rudeus calls Paul scum, but respects him because he's advanced in all 3 sword styles. Rudeus mixes magic into their spar, but Paul counters him. Paul mentions school, dismisses it, rambles about noble girls, and when Rudeus brings up cute girls, Paul advises sticking with one, glancing towards Sylphie. Rudeus feels stuck in swords and magic. He mentions leaving the village, but Sylphie tackles him crying and begs him not to go. He promises to stay. One night, Paul brings a letter from Roxy. She's tutoring the 7th prince in the Chiron kingdom, says the prince learns fast and even steals her underwear, and recommends Renoa Magic University. Paul is impressed she's reached king class, but of course the first thing this degenerate zeroes in on is the panties. Rudeus reads the letter in bed and realizes how pathetic he is. At dinner, he asks Paul to pay tuition for him and Sylphie at Renoa. Paul says no. Sword training isn't done, he's too young, and they can't afford it. Rudeus asks for a job instead to earn tuition himself. Paul agrees. A carriage arrives and a beast woman named Ghislaine steps out. Dark skin, white hair, animal ears, eye patch, tail. Paul greets her like an old friend. She meets baby Norn and jokes she's lucky she doesn't take after Paul. Zenith hugs Rudeus goodbye, but he didn't agree to leave. Paul asks how he'd feel if someone told him to stay away from Sylphie, and Rudeus says he wouldn't want that. Paul sighs, grabs him, and they spar one last time. Paul overwhelms him and knocks him out. Rudeus wakes up face down in a moving carriage. Ghislaine tells him they'll be working together starting tomorrow. Rudeus sits in a moving carriage with Ghislaine and finds a letter from Paul. Paul got him the job he asked for, tutoring a noble girl in the city of Roa. Ghislaine is the girl's bodyguard and a sword king, and this woman looks like she could snap Rudeus in half without putting down her breakfast. She wants him to teach her reading and writing in exchange for sword training. The catch is brutal. Paul forbids Rudeus from returning home, sending letters or making any contact for 5 years. Paul says he noticed Rudeus was becoming too dependent on Sylphie and decided that wasn't good for her. Rudeus is furious, but accepts it. He admits Paul has a point. Sylphie needs to solve her own problems, and he can't keep leaning on her either. They arrive at the Boreas Greyrot Manor in Roa. Philip, the city's mayor and Paul's cousin, greets Rudeus and explains the arrangement. He warns that his daughter is willful and only takes to certain people. He doesn't expect much from Rudeus, but agrees to try him out because Paul asked. Philip introduces Rudeus to his daughter Eris, a red-haired girl with an intense glare that could melt steel. She immediately slaps him for being younger than her and talking back. This dumb, cocky little idiot punches her in the stomach. She beats him senseless. He blasts her off with wind magic and runs like the spineless weasel that he is. He hides from her around the manor while she hunts him down screaming. Later, Rudeus meets with Philip and proposes a plan to trick Eris into wanting to study, because apparently this kid thinks he's some criminal mastermind. Philip mentions that all previous teachers gave up after meeting her. They stage a fake kidnapping. Rudeus and Eris wake up tied up in a dungeon. Rudeus tells Eris they've been captured and points out that if she knew magic, she could burn through the ropes herself. A large man enters and plays the role of their captor, but this idiot takes it too far and actually beats Eris bloody, stomping on her head and throwing her around. Rudeus watches in horror, unsure if it's still acting. He heals her wounds partway and tells her she could heal herself if she'd studied. He breaks through the wall with earth magic, pretends to leave her behind, then freezes the door shut with ice so the men can't get in. Eris begs him not to leave. He comes back on the condition she stops shouting and being violent. They escape together. hitching a ride on a coach back toward Roa. But on the streets of the city, real kidnappers grab Eris. Rudius fights them with fire, earth spikes, and rock projectiles. He launches a fireball into the sky as a signal flare. The leader offers him 100 gold pieces to join them and betray Eris. Rudeus considers it for a moment like the greedy little rat that he is, then refuses, saying money can't buy what saving her would earn him. The swordsman hurls his blade at them. Ghislaine drops in from the rooftops like she was waiting for this exact moment and cuts these dirty, worthless kidnappers down instantly. Rudius stares at his blood-covered hands in shock, realizing how close he came to dying. Back at the manor, Eris tells Rudius to wait. She gives him permission to call her by her first name. He smiles and thanks her. He's got his first job. Philip explains to Rudeus that the kidnapping was motivated by the value of grey rat blood, both politically and physically, and they agree to publicly credit Ghislaine with the rescue to make the family look strong. Rudius meets Eris's mother, Hilda, who takes one look at him and decides he's garbage. Then Eris's grandfather, Soros, comes crashing in like a wrecking ball with a temper problem, a loud, obnoxious old man who is literally just Eris in 70 years. Soros demands Rudeus teach Eris magic because she won't stop running her mouth about the spells he used during the kidnapping. Rudius tells him Eris needs to ask him herself, so Soros drags her in. And after some prodding, this short-tempered psychopath does a cat ear pose and actually begs him to teach her. She agrees to magic, but flat out refuses reading, writing, and math because apparently being literate is beneath her. Rudius settles into his routine as Eris's tutor and teaches Ghislaine reading and arithmetic on the side. Eris picks up magic fast and loves blowing things up, but every single time Rudeus opens a textbook, she bolts like he pulled out a weapon. She hides around the manor, comes back just to punch him in the face, and then runs again. After a month of getting his teeth rattled by a feral child, Rudius asks Ghislaine for help. Ghislaine tells Eris about her old adventuring party, the Fangs of the Black Wolf, which had 6 members including Paul and Zenith. Eris is immediately hooked by the stories. Rudius seizes the moment and asks Ghislaine if she's ever been in trouble because she couldn't do math. Ghislaine explains that after the party broke up, she traveled alone but couldn't calculate money, went 10 days without food, ate monster droppings out of desperation, got violently sick, and almost died fighting off monsters while dealing with the runs. Ghislaine asks Rudius to teach her math too. Eris quietly sits back down at the table and picks up her quill. Time passes. Eris keeps beating the brakes off Rudeus in their daily sword training. Ghislaine points out that this pathetic coward freezes up every time someone swings at him aggressively and tells him to figure it out himself. Rudius realizes Eris hasn't had a single day off since he arrived and gives her 1 day a week to rest. They explore the city of Roa together. At the market, a merchant tries to sell Rudius an aphrodisiac, and this dirty little creep writes the details down in a secret script only he can read. Eris demands to know what he's writing, and he lies through his teeth saying he's noting prices of goods. He then teaches Eris practical math by comparing costs between stalls. Eris answers the haggling question wrong, and Ghislaine gives the correct answer, which lights a fire under Eris to try harder. They visit a bookshop where Eris offers to buy Rudeus a book with her grandfather's money. He refuses and tells her to wait until she earns her own. He suggests they ask Philip to give Eris an allowance when they get back. On the walk home, Rudius spots a massive floating island in the sky. Ghislaine identifies it as the flying fortress of Perugius, the armored dragon king, one of 3 heroes who defeated the demon god Laplace 400 years ago. Eris explains the entire calendar is named after him. Rudius realizes it was in a book his parents used to read him back home, though he'd always thought it was just a fairy tale. Back at lessons, Eris uses her new allowance to buy Rudius the aphrodisiac from the market. He panics. She and Ghislaine corner him, demanding to know what it is. He runs. Ghislaine and Eris spar in the snow, and Ghislaine says she could reach advanced rank soon. At lessons, Eris shows her work, but Rudeus says every answer is wrong. She slams the table while Ghislaine demonstrates a fireball. At sunset, Eris begs her mother to watch her magic. Her mother smiles but shifts to disapproval, and Rudius wonders if he did something wrong. Rudius finishes carving a figurine of a girl in a witch's hat, rotating every angle like this sick, twisted little freak sculpted his teacher from memory. Edna knocks and explains Eris's birthday party is coming with a dance as the main event, but Eris can't manage basic courtesy. Rudeus agrees to give up lesson time. Rudeus visits the library to study Beast God. Philip lights up and the two bond over Beastkin like obsessive weirdos at a petting zoo, gushing about ears and tails. Philip says he truly has grey rat blood and lets him borrow books. Rudius writes to Roxy and the manor shifts from winter to spring. Months pass. Beast God is manageable with Ghislaine, and Battle God is similar to human, but Demon God has him stumped. Eris storms out of dance lessons. Edna pleads with Rudeus to bring her back. Rudeus finds Eris on a hay pile and she kicks him in the face. She says she doesn't need dancing and wants to skip her party. He tells her she can't. She asks why she has to do things she's bad at, and he thinks he knows the feeling. That's how he ran from things in his old life. She says he can do everything so he wouldn't understand. He tells her he started foreign languages and can't make sense of them, but the worse he is at something, the better it feels when he gets it. She jumps down, telling him to follow her. They practice, and she insists she's calm while launching him into the wall like a rag doll thrown by a rabid little psychopath. A montage follows. Rudeus studies with Ghislaine, Eris practices, and Rudeus sells his handcrafted adult toy, collectible figurine, for a gold coin. Late at night, a package arrives from Roxy mentioning the Prince of Sharon, this lonely, pathetic, disgusting freak who bought a statuette of her with a removable robe and moles in all the right places, and a handwritten demon god textbook she made him. Rudeus realizes his figurine made it to the prince and remarks he has good taste. They practice again, and Edna says they may just make it through tomorrow. The party arrives. Soros challenges the crowd to take his granddaughter's hand, and Rudeus steps forward. She goes too fast and falls face first in front of everyone. Rudeus asks for another dance, tells her to close her eyes and step as if dodging an attack on his signal. He calls out, and her steps land perfectly. They dance across the floor, and the crowd erupts in applause. Soros lifts both children onto his shoulders. Philip pulls Rudeus aside and says if he takes one of the girls to bed, he shouldn't get her pregnant. Later, Rudeus gives Eris and Ghislaine each a wand. Ghislaine gives Eris a gold ring said to ward off evil wolves at night. Rudeus asks why she calls it superstition, and she starts explaining about Paul inviting her to go swimming. Actual swimming, then stops and says, never mind. Rudeus wakes to find Eris asleep beside him clutching the ring. He reaches toward her, then pulls back, remarking the ring really does work. Rudeus finds Sauros staring at a red, glowing sphere in the sky. Sauros says it's nothing to worry about. Rudeus puts his hands together and prays for girls to rain from the sky. 2 years pass, and Rudeus is almost 10. Eris has reached advanced rank in sword god style, while Rudeus spent his time buried in books learning 3 foreign languages, including beast god with Ghislaine's help, because this hopeless basement dweller would rather memorize grammar than go outside. The red light in the sky is still there and getting bigger. Nobody knows what it is. Eris and the household secretly prepare a birthday party for Rudeus. He overhears everything and learns the Boreas family can't throw him a public celebration because of politics. Paul's full name is Paul Nodos Greyrat, and the Nodos are one of the 4 main Greyrat families. Paul's younger brother runs the Nodos house, and having a Nodos child under Boreas protection would cause problems. At the party, Eris gives Rudeus flowers, and the whole staff celebrates. This conniving little fraud puts on a tearful performance so convincing that Sauros loses his mind and declares war on the entire Nodos family, screaming until they physically drag the deranged old man out of the room. Eris's surprise gift is a big, long, hard staff. A custom-made magic staff called Aqua Hardia, crafted from the finest materials across the world. Philip tells Rudeus that Eris had 2 brothers who were taken at birth by the Boreas family head in the capital. Hilda hated Rudeus because her own sons couldn't be with her, while someone else's child walked freely around the manor. Philip asks Rudeus to marry Eris and help him take over the family. Rudeus declines. That night, Eris shows up in his room wearing a nightgown. She's clearly nervous, but Rudeus immediately tries to engage in plot. She tells him to stop. He realizes Philip probably set this up, but this dirty, shameless degenerate talks himself into going further anyway. Eris gives limited consent, and Rudeus pushes past it until she snaps and launches him across the room like a rag doll. Lying on the floor, he finally realizes how badly he lost control and resolves to apologize. Eris comes back and forgives him because it's his birthday, but tells him to wait 5 years. He agrees. Back at Rudeus's old village, Paul fights swarms of monsters that have been appearing across Fitoa. Sylphie visits Zenith, Lilia, and the girls. She gives Lilia a handmade pendant to send to Rudeus for his birthday. The family notices a strange cloud forming on the horizon. In the Sharon kingdom, Roxy sees the same disturbance and worries about Rudeus. On a mountain, a silver-haired man stares down a red dragon and it flies away. He senses mana gathering and heads toward it. A demon girl with purple hair and horns named Kishirika Kishirisu declares herself the great emperor of the demon world and sprints toward the source like she's late for a sale at Hot Topic. From his floating fortress, Perugia suspects someone is trying to unseal the demon god Laplace and sends his servant Almanfi to investigate. Rudeus takes Eris and Ghislaine to an open field to test his new staff. He casts Cumulonimbus and is stunned by how little mana it costs. The power is incredible. But then the sky above them splits open with swirling mana that isn't his. Almanfi drops from the sky and attacks, believing Rudeus is the source. Ghislaine intercepts with her sword and identifies herself as a sword king. Almanfi backs off but warns them. Then the sky tears apart completely. A massive beam of blue light crashes down. Ghislaine screams for Rudeus and Eris. Rudeus grabs Eris and the light swallows everything. Rudeus wakes up in a white void and sees his old body from his previous life standing right in front of him. The same greasy, unwashed, disgusting blob of a human being that spent decades rotting in a bedroom doing absolutely nothing. A glowing figure appears and introduces itself as the man god. Rudeus doesn't trust this shady, sketchy weirdo for a second and accuses him of being a fraud peddling false hope. He's convinced this is the afterlife, and that his life as Rudeus was just a dream. The man god tells him his body is fine, and he'll wake up as Rudeus again. He says he didn't reincarnate Rudeus, and blames the whole thing on the dragon god, like a co-worker throwing someone under the bus in a meeting. He explains that Rudeus got caught in a mana cataclysm, and was teleported to the demon continent, where he'll die without help. Rudeus eventually gives in and listens. The man god tells him to rely on and help the man he finds when he wakes up. Rudeus opens his eyes in a dark cave. Eris is asleep beside him. A campfire is burning. Across the flames sits a muscular man with green hair and a red gem in his forehead that looks like someone glued a Christmas ornament to his face. Rudeus recognizes him as a Spurd. The man says they fell from the sky and he built a fire to keep them warm. Rudeus thanks him and introduces himself. The man gives his name as Ruyard Spurdia. Ruyard tells them they're in Biagoya on the demon continent. He offers to escort them home, saying abandoning children would damage the Spurd tribe's reputation, then admits the reputation is already beyond repair. Can't damage what's already in the trash. When Eris wakes up and sees Ruyard, she screams in terror, hides under a blanket, cries, calls for Ghislaine, and apologizes to Rudeus for everything she's ever done. Eventually, she forces herself to introduce herself while shaking. Rudeus calms her down and gets Ruyard to ask to be friends. Eris accepts. They reach a village of the Migurd tribe, small people with blue and purple hair who communicate through telepathy. The village chief Rakus notices Rudeus's necklace and recognizes it. Rudeus tells him his future wife, his teacher Roxy, gave it to him. A younger Migurd man breaks down in tears and says Roxy is his daughter. Rudeus has stumbled into Roxy's hometown. Her father hasn't heard from her in over 20 years. The Migurd live to about 200, and Roxy herself is 44. Rudeus tells him she's safe in the Sharon kingdom. The chief explains that Ruyard can't enter cities because of the Spurd's feared reputation. Ruyard says he'll kill anyone who gets in his way, casual as ever. Rudeus asks the chief what Ruyard's goal is. His goal is to clear the Spurd tribe's name. Ruyard explains that during the war 400 years ago, the hero Laplas gave the Spurd cursed spears that drove them to kill indiscriminately, including their own families. The spear he carries now contains his son's soul, the son who gave his life to save Ruyard from the curse. Rudeus is moved. He promises to help Ruyard restore the Spurd's reputation. They leave the village with supplies from Roxy's parents. Rudeus meets Roxy's mother Rokari, who is 102, but looks like she could pass for Roxy's older sister. They set off across the demon continent together. Eris is out here fighting wolf monsters in the desert with a brand new sword, and she's having the time of her life like a short-tempered psychopath at an all-you-can-beat buffet. Rudeus eats some nasty demon continent food and misses rice like a heartbroken ex. The three travelers reach the cliffs surrounding the city of Rikarisu. Guards at the gate are on high alert because Dead End has been spotted nearby. Dead End, Rudeus learns, is the name people use for Rujard, the demon continent's most wanted. So this scheming little con artist dyes Rujard's green hair blue with local minerals, dresses him up as a Migurd, and walks him right past the guards like it's nothing. Inside the city, Eris is amazed by the alien architecture, the diverse demon races filling the streets, and the market stalls selling insects and larvae. Rudeus buys her a white hooded cloak with cat ears, and she treasures it immediately. They head to the Adventurers Guild to register, and this delusional little mastermind puts on an eye patch, slicks his hair back, and makes a dramatic entrance announcing Ruyard as a Spurd warrior. The whole guild laughs because Ruyard's hair is blue, not green. Nobody believes them. Rudeus registers their party under the name Dead End anyway. They start at F rank. Slaying jobs require C rank, so they're stuck running errands like delivery boys. A horse-headed adventurer named Nokopara mocks them and suggests they take a lost cat job. At an inn that night, a group of rookie adventurers tries to recruit Eris. One of them grabs her cloak and damages it. Big mistake. Eris beats all three of them into the ground like the violent little gremlin that she is. Rudius heals the injured girl and apologizes, explaining that Eris doesn't speak demon god. The man god appears in Rudius's dream that night and tells him to accept the lost cat job. Rudius follows the advice. Ruijerd tracks the cat with his third eye to a cave outside the city. Inside, they find cages full of kidnapped pets. 3 smugglers arrive. Rudeus traps them with earth magic, while Eris and Ruijerd back him up. One smuggler breaks free and hits Rudeus. Ruijerd instantly kills the attacker by cutting off his head. Rudeus is shaken. He stares at the severed head on the ground and tells Ruijerd he cannot kill people. Ruijerd says he killed the man because he hurt a child. Rudius insists it doesn't matter. Killing will only deepen the fear surrounding the spurred name. It doesn't matter who you kill, he says, only who killed them. Ruijerd says he doesn't understand. Eris tells Ruijerd he is only making Rudeus's job harder. The surviving smugglers confess they are D-rank adventurers who kidnapped pets and collected the finder's rewards. Rudius forces them into a deal. Team up with Dead End and he'll spare their lives. Ruijerd refuses. He will not depend on villains. Eris screams at Ruijerd that he complains too much, that Rudeus is doing all of this for their sake. She tells him Rudeus is amazing and that everything will work out if he just listens. She declares that if Ruijerd won't cooperate, she and Rudeus will manage on their own. Ruijerd clenches his spear and says he is a spurred warrior who never walks away from his resolutions. He vows he will see them home no matter what. Outside the next day, the smugglers report they have raised their party rank to C as instructed. Rudeus tells them to take a B-rank slaying job tomorrow, while Dead End takes an F-rank job. They will trade. When they finish, they are to spread the Dead End name and make it sound good. Nokopara sees the arrangement and laughs it off like the clueless, horse-faced idiot that he is. Roxy arrives at a refugee camp and finds a wall covered in lists of the dead. Rudeus and his family aren't on it. She's relieved, but learns the Mana Cataclysm has devastated the entire region. She runs into 2 former members of the Fangs of the Black Wolf, a dwarf and an elf woman, who know Paul. Meanwhile, Rudeus reads a letter from Paul. Zenith, Lilia, and Aisha are all missing. Norn is safe with Paul. He's formed a search party and is heading to the Millis continent because it's Zenith's homeland. He asks anyone who finds his family to write to the Militian Adventurers Guild. Back on the Demon Continent, Dead End takes a guild job to investigate a mysterious monster in the petrified forest. They find the rookie party led by Kurt already there, plus a group of ugly, pig-faced veteran adventurers who tell the kids to go home. Rudeus decides to tail the rookies in case they need help, but not out of kindness. This manipulative, scheming little weasel wants to let them walk into danger and swoop in at the last second, so he looks like a hero. It backfires horribly. One of Kurt's party members, a blonde man in a green cloak, gets thrown into a rock wall and killed because Rudeus held Ruijerd back too long. Ruijerd slams him against a tree and demands to know why he let a child die. Kurt steps in and insists it's their own fault for misjudging the job. She says adventurers accept death. Rudeus is shaken to his core by what his scheming caused. They find the veteran party slaughtered by the real mystery monster, a massive red hood cobra. One of the pigmen is still alive, trapped in its jaws. Rudeus tells the group to save him. Ruijerd and Eris attack together while Rudeus blasts a hole clean through it with his staff. They kill the cobra, but they're too late. The survivor is already dead. Nokopara discovers Dead End's job trading scheme and blackmails Rudeus for half their monthly earnings. This greedy, slimy, backstabbing bottom feeder thinks he's got leverage. Rudeus decides to deal with it by force. Ruijerd washes off his blue hair dye in the rain, revealing his green spurred hair. Nokopara sees the real Dead End and collapses in terror like the spineless, worthless worm that he is. Ruijerd grabs him by the throat and threatens him. The entire city panics. Even the adventurers Dead End saved are afraid. Rudeus asks them why they're scared of someone who saved their lives. Kurt apologizes, but says she can't help it. That night, Rudeus and Eris search for Ruijerd outside the city. Rudeus apologizes. Ruijerd says the blame is his own. He didn't realize how much Rudeus was carrying. He says he sensed Rudeus's resolve when Rudeus was ready to kill Nokopara to protect Eris. Having something to protect makes someone a warrior, and Ruijerd recognizes Rudeus as one. He tells Rudeus not to worry about the Spurd's reputation and just focus on protecting Eris. Rudius promises to restore the spurred name anyway. They shake hands. Eris jumps in and demands to be included. The next morning, Ruijerd has shaved his head bald. He says the incident showed him how much his green hair frightens people. Rudius ties a headband around Ruijerd's forehead to hide his third eye, and all three of them wear matching headbands like they're starting a boy band nobody asked for. Rudius calls the first official dead-end strategy meeting. Their goal: reach the Asura kingdom. The ending montage shows the three traveling across the demon continent together and eventually reaching a coastal city. In the final scene, Roxy boards a ship with the dwarf and elf woman, heading out to search for Paul's family. Watch this next video, and I'll see you next time.